Hi guys, my name is James, I'm not a duck, and welcome back to another episode of my comprehensive guide to Redstone, where today we're going to be talking about droppers and dispensers. Last time we talked about hoppers and how they can pick up item entities sitting directly above them, getting placed directly into their inventory here, how they can push their items into other containers, and how they can pull items out of containers placed directly above them. We also talked about the ability to turn off these three functions by powering the hopper or any adjacent solid blocks using redstone, and how doing so allows us to make fairly simple item sorting systems for stackable items. So if you are interested in knowing what that's all about, then do go and give that episode a watch, but for now, moving on to droppers and dispensers. So this is a dropper, and it really is very simple. When activated, it just drops an item. As you can see, I've got this stack of stone in here, and when I press this button here, it drops one piece of stone out onto the ground. And that is pretty much it. If I activate it instead with a lever, you'll see that it's only activated the once when it becomes powered, and you need to depower and then power it again for it to spit out another item. The dropper will just drop any item that you put inside it upon activation. And this is the dispenser. It does look very similar to the dropper, the only difference being the fact that its mouth is a circle instead of this kind of triangle shape. So again, I've got a stack of stone in this dispenser, and in most cases and for the vast majority of items, the dispenser behaves exactly the same as the dropper. It will just drop an item when powered onto the ground in front of it. But for certain items under certain conditions, it will actually do different things. For example, if I replace the stack of stone in here with a stack of arrows, and then power the dispenser again, it will actually shoot it out as if the player had shot it from a bow themselves, instead of just dropping the arrow onto the floor like the dropper would. And the dispenser actually has a whole bunch of items for which it will do something other than just dropping them onto the ground like the dropper would. And I have all of those functions lined up here, so I'm going to talk through each one of them now. So firstly, with anything that the player or a compatible entity can wear, like a player head, jack-o'-lantern, elytra, or any piece of armor, then the item will be automatically equipped onto the player or entity sitting in front of the dispenser as long as there is nothing already in that armor slot being worn, like so. Elytra, boots, and a player head. Ta-da! An armor stand will be placed directly in front of the dispenser like so, and as we said, any kinds of arrows will be fired out as if being shot from a bow, and of course that also goes for any tipped arrows or spectral arrows as well. Boats will be placed as if the player placed them as long as they are dispensed on top of a block of water, otherwise it will just be spat out as a regular item. The same thing goes for minecarts. As long as there is a minecart rail placed in front of the dispenser, it will place the minecart directly onto the track. Any other projectiles such as snowballs, eggs, bottles of enchanting, splash potions, lingering potions, and wind charges will be used as if the player themselves was throwing them like so. Water buckets will dispense the water just as a player would, and the same thing goes for lava buckets. Obviously normally these would just spread out as per normal, but I'm using some tricks to make sure they don't do that for this video, so that everything stays nice and neat. And then any empty buckets inside of the dispenser will also be able to pick up any lava blocks or any water blocks in front of them too. The dispenser will also place jack-o'-lanterns and wither skeleton skulls if doing so will finish the creation of either an iron golem, a snow golem, or a wither, like so. Fire charges get fired out as if they were fired from a gas. Firework rockets get shot outwards in the direction that the dispenser is facing. Flint and steel will create fire in front of the dispenser as long as there is a solid block underneath. And of course doing so will deplete the durability of the flint and steel with each use, just like it would if a player was using it. And a struggle box will get placed in front of the dispenser as long as there is space available to place it. Any kind of spawn egg will just use the spawn egg and spawn whatever mob the egg is for. In this case, a sheep. A trident in Java Edition will be dropped as a regular item, though in Bedrock Edition it will be fired out like a projectile as if the player had thrown it, just like snowballs and the other projectile items. A pair of shears in a dispenser will shear a sheep directly in front of it like so, or can also collect honeycomb for a full beehive in front of it too, which then gets dropped in front of the dispenser, and of course in both cases will deplete the durability of the shears with each use. Things like horse armor, saddles, and happy-gas silencers will equip onto compatible mobs if they are in front of the dispensers and don't already have these items equipped onto them, like so. Much like the armor pieces mentioned at the start for players and other compatible mobs. A dispenser can also attach a chest to any tamed llamas or donkeys like so, but they do in fact have to be tamed for this to work, otherwise the chest will just drop onto the floor like a regular item. Dispensers can also use glowstone to recharge respawn anchors, just like that. Honeycomb can be used to wax a copper block, like that, but I did just want to point out that putting an axe inside a dispenser will not allow you to unwax the copper block in the same way. Empty water bottles can be used to collect water from a water source block, after which they will stay inside the dispenser if there is room to do so, otherwise they will be spat out onto the ground like regular items. And the same goes for using an empty water bottle on a filled beehive, where activating it will collect honey from the beehive, or bee nest of course, and the filled honey bottle will stay inside the dispenser if it can, again otherwise spitting it out onto the ground in front of the dispenser. Filled water bottles can also be used to turn dirt, coarse dirt, and rooted dirt into mud like that. A brush in a dispenser can brush an armadillo in front of it and produce an armadillo scoop, again depleting the durability of the brush by a whole 16 points with each use in this case. And lastly, dispensing a piece of TNT will dispense it and activate it just like this. Oh, I'm sorry little buddy. Whoops, I feel a little bit bad. He didn't die when I tested this. I'm sorry, guy. When there is multiple slots with items in them inside the dropper and the dropper or dispenser will select a random occupied slot to take an item from when it's activated. So here, with these 6 slots filled, we have a 3 in 6 chance of getting a piece of stone, a 2 in 6 chance of getting a wooden plank, and a 1 in 6 chance of getting an arrow. So if I press it, then we get a piece of stone. We press it again, we get another piece of stone. We press it again, we get an arrow. And we press it again, and we get a wooden plank. Of course, I won't do it for both, since it is the same, but again, that is how it works for both the dropper and the dispenser. And lastly is the dropper and dispenser's interactions with other containers. The dropper is able to directly insert an item into the inventory of another container, like this. Again, we have a stack of stone in here, and it's directly put a piece of stone into this chest. Notice how you don't even get the sound of the dropper activating, but the stone does end up in here anyway. The dispenser, on the other hand, won't do that. If I activate this one, you'll see with this same stack of stone, we get the particle effect and the item just pops out onto the ground without going into the container. If I do that again, standing over here so that I don't pick it up, you'll see it just pops out onto the ground, as it would if the chest wasn't there, or it was just any other kind of block. If the dispenser does dispense an item into a hopper that is unpowered, and then as long as the player isn't standing too close and picks the item up before the hopper can grab it, the hopper will grab the item, just like so, and the stone will end up inside of the hopper. Of course, if the hopper is powered, then it won't be able to do that, and it will just get spat out onto the ground just like it did before with that chest over there. Again, with the dropper, the item is just placed directly into the hopper, and even if the hopper is powered, because the dropper is doing the inserting directly, rather than the hopper taking in the items itself, the dropper is still able to insert a piece of stone into the hopper, as you can see here, regardless of the fact that the hopper is being powered and its normal functions disabled. And lastly, I will just say that any interactions with how droppers put items into containers is of course mostly similar to how hoppers put items into containers, with how for certain containers only certain items can be put into them, and just like last time when I talked about hoppers, and how putting the hopper facing into the side or the top of a furnace or a brewing stand affects what slots are being accessed inside the containers. The same thing applies to the dropper being placed to face into the side or the top of them too. And of course, as always, I'll quickly show you how to craft the components that we've looked at today. So the dropper is crafted using 7 pieces of cobblestone in kind of this N shape that you see here, with a piece of redstone dust to fill this middle gap at the bottom. And the dispenser is crafted using the same arrangement, but with an added bow to fill in the middle square of the crafting grid. But that is all that I have time for today, guys, so I do hope that you enjoyed this video. Please do leave a like if you did, and subscribe if you want to see more. And do leave a comment down below telling me what you thought. So I'll see you next time, guys. Bye!